Going to church, mass is a trigger. Reading scriptures is a trigger. Praying the rosary is a trigger. I still have nightmares of them trying to either get me or catch me or trying to hurt me, trying to beat me. There's a lot of beautiful orders out there. But there's also orders that are pretty much like the Sisters Minor of Mary Immaculate, abusive in nature. It's not just men who are perpetrators, it's women.
Religion was very important. It was foremost for our family. It was a family affair to pray the rosary and go to Mass and just be a part of a Catholic family.
My family life growing up was very religious. My mother and my grandmother both were ardent Catholics. So when I felt called, actually in 8th grade, I thought, well, after high school I'll go into the convent.
Well, my childhood was basically not a perfect childhood. I suffered abuse, sexual abuse, physical abuse. This is me making my baptism on Easter Vigil. When I decided to become Catholic, I became like a sponge. I wanted to absorb everything, and I wanted to give back because I felt that it was the mercy of God that God brought me out of this, and it helped me find another family, which is the church. And so I saw this little blue sheet that said Sisters Minor of Mary Immaculate, come and see. And so I went on a retreat. I met their Sister Teresa Kovacs. It was a lot of hugs. There was a lot of encouragement. They would listen to you, and you felt really important. You felt like you're valued. And so it was decided on January 1st of 1995 that I would enter my postulancy.
I joined the Sisters Minor of Mary Immaculate in June of 1995.
I entered around 96.
I entered June of 1996.
Then as you become a postulant and a novice, you learn that everything is not so like roses. It's a lot of thorns, superiors would be yelling at the other sisters, and they would be yelling at you, and they would tell you you're selfish or full of pride. I really think that it was the beginning stages of breaking you down.
Oh, this is Patricia in a nativity scene that we all worked very hard on at the Stamford Convent. And this was all of us. This was myself, Patricia, and Sister Teresa.
Teresa Kovacs is a wolf in sheep's clothing.
To people on the outside, she was as sweet as could be. She was like a different person on the outside. If she talked to somebody in the parish, she was happy and, sweet and nice. And then when she would walk into the convent, well, it was a whole different world.
I witnessed other girls just being yelled at on a constant basis by Teresa Kovacs. She would do that to everyone. It was more Georgiana that she would focus on most of the time, and I would just be around.
It would be a torrent of the nastiest stuff you could ever say to a human being. She would say it to me. It was meant to keep people in line.
We were not allowed to walk outside ever by ourselves. I was not allowed to walk around the block. For 2 years, I was not allowed to have any physical exercise. I was not allowed, none of us were.
We weren't allowed to talk to each other. We were barely allowed to look at each other.
You couldn't develop your interior life if you were a chatterbox, we were told. So I suppose that has merit, but it also kind of isolated people, which was never good.
They isolate you away from the family. They lower your intake of sugar and caffeines to make you weak and submissive. Basically, like your food, is pretty much like, less and less. That's pretty much like what a cult is, and break you down. That's the whole thing. All this is to break you down. I think 2 times I was physically abused, but I witnessed physical abuse of other sisters as well. So that was, like, I'd have to say 3 or 4 times that I witnessed different abuse. I started to get suicidal thoughts when I was in the order. Yeah.
Anybody that's in a situation where they're full of anxiety, or they wake up in the morning and they dread the day like I did, then something is wrong. Now, like with me, I tried to rationalize things, and it was a hard decision to make to go into a religious order to begin with. So I didn't want to just, be a weak person and come out, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to give it my all, and I think I did. But I want other people to realize, if you feel this way inside, this to me is abuse. I don't think abuse is always physical. I think it can be emotional. It has to be. It was for me. It was definitely emotional abuse.
I remember I started not feeling right. I finally said, something's not right. And they said, well, I suppose we'll send you up to the doctor. And he puts his hand on my stomach and he's like, oh my God, I'm taking you to the hospital right now. And I said, oh, that's not going to happen. And he's like, what do you mean? Well, that's a whole call to, Mother and Teresa. And he goes, well, then let her call, because I'm putting you in the car now and you're going, because you're going to die. I had a tumor on my left ovary the size of an overstuffed football, and a tumor on my right ovary the size of an overstuffed softball, and they were crushing all of my other organs. When I came back from the hospital, I had 21 staples in my abdomen. I was shipped back to Stamford because Sister Teresa felt she should take care of me.
She was put in the bedroom to recuperate across the hall from my bedroom. And I would hear Teresa Kovacs go in her room and start yelling at her. Now, just remember, Georgiana just got out of a life-changing, life-saving operation and was trying to recuperate. I'm assuming that Georgiana couldn't move and was being yelled at by the superior. There's nothing else that it could have been. So there's no way that she could have gotten away. So when I saw this was the beginning of the end for me.
I know my room was just a little down from hers on the other side of the hall, and I remember laying in bed and hearing voices there, and it had to be Sister Teresa. And I wondered, I just wondered, why would she be coming up there late at night like that? And the other thing I heard was banging on the wall at times in Sister Georgiana's room.
Sometimes Teresa, instead of hitting me, would hit the wall. But she would also hit me on the arms and legs, because typically people didn't see those. But I had bruises all the time. I mean, I'd take off my habit and I'd be like, wow, there's lots of marks on me. I guess the reason I didn't walk away right then and there was, well, I was too sick. And I thought eventually it will end. Eventually she will hear me saying, leave me alone, and she will leave me alone. And then I thought, well, at a certain point you got to put pen to paper. This is a very lengthy letter that I wrote to Mother, telling her of the incidents that were happening. Yeah, sometimes I forget about all the details. Sometimes you want to forget. What this sister proceeded to do was every night from my return from Three Rivers until just before my vows, at least 4 months, that sister would come into my room after Compline and stay for half an hour to an hour. During this time, she sat on my bed and held my hand and talked to me about whatever came to mind. I was not permitted to sleep during these visits because it was a charity from my superior and it cost her, as I was told repeatedly. This was the letter that earned me not having to ever live with Teresa Kovacs ever again, because I reported a good deal of abuse in this 11-page letter.
I mean, you just wonder, why didn't we just leave? Why didn't we go call the police? Why didn't we get help? Well, I eventually did, but when you're in the kind of environment where you're controlled and you can't think, then it starts to make sense.
I wanted to leave shortly after the whole episode with the cancer and everything. But that whole phrase that I've said a million times, I came for Jesus, I stay for Jesus.
Every single red flag of this being a cult was there. Separate from each other, don't allow each other to talk to each other, control them, break them down. The only difference is they're going to use religion to get in where they can. I couldn't stay there anymore. I was trying to figure out how to get out. I don't have my ID. I don't have anything. I don't have money. I don't have a way to get on the phone if the superior's around. I'm watched at all times. Around 1998, Teresa Kovacs went on a retreat to Italy and left me in charge of 2 younger girls. That was after being there 3 years. So that was my chance. We were able to arrange for us just to leave in the middle of the day without our habits and with borrowed clothes. We looked like we probably just walked up out of a hospital bed out of a coma. I'm sure that's how terrible we looked.
I left in 2003. I basically just had the skirt underneath my habit that I was wearing in a shirt, but I was more afraid of the convent than I was afraid of the world. And so I had to make that decision that I'm going to leave, and I left.
I left the community in March of 2010. I put on jeans and a t-shirt one day and a jacket and walked out the door.
I left in July of 1998. While I had a lot of confusion about what to do with my life after that, it was a big shock to me. All of a sudden I'm in there and next day I'm not, and I thought I'd be there for the rest of my life. It was a big shock, but the overwhelming sense that I had in leaving was joy. I felt so much joy when I got out of there.
The church thinks the abuse is done. Abuse is not done. It's still in your soul, it's in your mind, in your body.
The lasting effects of all the abuse and harm are still with me today. I mean, the PTSD, the anxiety, the depression.
Anyone that threatens you in any way and degrades you, this is an abusive pattern, whether it's a marriage, a co-worker, or a boss situation at your workplace, a sibling, or even a religious order.
I don't think this affected my faith, like even in a bad marriage. If somebody in a bad marriage, you don't blame God for that. It's the people.
The Catholic Church does have many problems, and many other places have problems. Many companies have problems in the corporate world that ever since I got out, I've seen. So it can affect your spirituality that way if you don't separate the two. They're separate. Teresa Kovacs needs to be taken away from these parishes, and she needs to be held responsible for her actions. It means that other people that can be a victim around her need to be aware of who she is.
I would like to see justice. I would like to also make others aware so that if they're suffering the same kinds of things, that they don't feel bad about themselves and that they come forward, because it's not their fault. Because people make bad choices. It doesn't mean we have to hide and suffer with it. I'm not going to let it own me anymore. And I'm not the victim, and I'm not the poor thing. I'm the survivor. I'm the person who walked away.